I need you to stay with me here, because this is important. Late last week, the President of the United States picked up a telephone, called a United States senator from his own party, and screamed profanity at her. Not a Democrat, not a member of the opposition, a Republican, a member of his own team. And why? Because she voted to limit his power. What I'm about to walk you through is something we haven't seen in American politics in a very long time. I've gone back through the records. This kind of organized, deliberate, internal resistance to a sitting president from his own party on matters of war and peace, you have to go back decades to find a parallel. This isn't theater. This isn't the usual Washington kabuki, where senators furrow their brows, issue concerned statements, then fall in line when the vote comes. This is different. This is Republicans actively, legislatively working to block the president's authority to take this country to war. When Trump picked up that phone and unleashed on Senator Collins using profanity, issuing threats, treating her vote as a personal betrayal, he revealed exactly how he processes resistance. He doesn't see it as democracy functioning. He doesn't see it as checks and balances working as designed. He sees it as treachery, as an existential threat. How a leader responds to being told no tells you everything about how they'll govern when the pressure really builds. When a leader responds to constitutional limits with fury rather than dialogue, they're revealing how they actually view power, not as something granted by law, not as something shared with a co-equal branch of government, but as something personal, something that belongs to them. Now I need to tell you what actually set this off, and I need you to sit with it for a minute, because when you first hear it, it's going to sound absurd. President Trump has been publicly, repeatedly, in front of cameras, floating the idea of using military force to acquire Greenland. I know how that sounds. It sounds like a joke. It's not. The President of the United States has stated on multiple occasions that military options are on the table for acquiring territory that belongs to Denmark. Denmark, a NATO ally, a country we are treaty-bound to defend. Here's what most Americans don't understand about NATO, and this is crucial. Article 5 of the NATO Treaty establishes collective defense. It's the heart of the entire alliance. An attack on one member nation is legally, formally treated as an attack on all member nations. That's the principle that has kept the peace in Europe for 75 years. That's why NATO exists. Greenland is Danish territory. If the United States took military action against Greenland, we wouldn't just be attacking Denmark. We would be attacking the NATO alliance itself. We would be at war with our own allies. We would be shredding the most successful military alliance in modern history. The scenario that members of the United States Senate now have to take seriously, not as theory, not as hypothetical, but as genuine possibility, is an American president putting us in direct military conflict with Europe over land acquisition. This is not normal. This is not strategic ambiguity. This is not tough negotiating. This is a kind of rhetoric that in any previous era would have ended a political career overnight. The War Powers Act exists for exactly this kind of moment. It was written in the aftermath of Vietnam, when Congress finally confronted the reality that presidents had been dragging the country into wars without proper authorization. The law requires a president to consult Congress before committing troops. It limits military action without congressional approval. It's supposed to be an emergency brake on presidential war-making power. Republicans just pulled it against their own president. That's unprecedented. What happened last week is Republicans joining with Democrats to advance a war powers resolution, a formal legal mechanism to restrict the president's ability to commit American military forces without congressional authorization. Think about what that means. Members of the president's own party looked at his behavior, looked at what he's saying, what he's threatening, and concluded we need to put legal guardrails around this man before something irreversible happens. That's not a policy disagreement. That's an intervention. And here's what the senators noticed. The intimidation didn't work. Collins didn't change her vote. Neither did the other Republicans who crossed over. They absorbed the anger. They hung up the phone. They went back to work. That moment, that failure of intimidation, may be more significant than the vote itself because it demonstrated something this president has never fully accepted. Loyalty in politics is conditional. It's based on mutual interest, shared goals, perceived benefit. When a leader stops providing those things, loyalty evaporates. Right now, Republican senators are doing the math. They're looking at the war rhetoric, the emergency declarations, the chaos, and asking themselves, what exactly am I getting out of this? While Republicans were organizing around military authority, Trump made another move. He declared a national emergency related to Venezuelan oil assets. On the surface, this sounds like energy policy, securing resources, protecting American interests. But look closer. The timeline for actually benefiting from these assets, years, maybe decades. The infrastructure required, massive. The primary beneficiaries, multinational energy corporations, not American consumers. So why declare an emergency? Because emergencies do something very specific. In American law, they concentrate power. They allow the president to bypass normal procedures, normal oversight, normal congressional involvement. They shift authority away from the legislative branch and toward the executive. Emergencies are supposed to be for genuine crises, imminent threats that require immediate action. They're not supposed to be strategic tools for avoiding scrutiny. But that's exactly how they're being used. Notice the pattern. Every time oversight tightens, every time Congress starts asking uncomfortable questions, a new emergency appears, a new threat materializes. The conversation shifts from accountability to crisis management. This isn't accidental. It's a strategy. Flood the zone, change the subject, raise the stakes. Hope attention drifts elsewhere. When presidents use emergency powers to direct resources toward political goals rather than genuine crises, markets warp, investments get misallocated. The economy serves politics instead of people. When government becomes unpredictable, ordinary people pay the price. They're the ones who can't hedge their bets. They're the ones who depend on systems working as advertised. Every democracy faces this question eventually. At some point, a leader comes along who believes the rules don't apply to them, who treats every limit as an obstacle, who sees a constitution as a suggestion rather than a constraint. When that happens, the system faces a choice. It can bend, it can break, or it can hold. Right now, we're watching America's system get tested in real time. Republicans crossing the aisle. Votes being taken that weren't supposed to happen. That's not nothing. Systems hold when people make them hold. When lawmakers decide their oaths matter more than their careers. That choice is being made right now.